In one country, a king used to rule. The king was married, but he did not think good about women. His behavior with his queen was very wrong, but the poor queen still tolerated all his harshness. When the queen was pregnant, the king said that if a girl was born, he would throw her in the jungle so wild animals could eat her. When the queen came to know about this cruel plan, she begged God with tears to give her a son. But nature had decided something else. The queen gave birth to a girl. When the king heard this, he immediately called the royal officer and ordered him to take the baby girl into the forest and throw her there so wild animals could eat her. The officer was also a father. His heart did not want to do this cruel act, but he knew the king's nature very well. If he disobeyed, the king would grind not only him, but also his wife and children in the oil mill. Helpless, he went to the queen. The queen saw his face and understood everything. Out of deep sorrow, she fainted. The officer cried, seeing her condition. With trembling hands, he picked up the princess and walked out of the palace. He was the chief officer, and he had the royal seal with permanent ink that never fades once stamped. He took the princess to the house and stamped the royal mark on her wrist. He also arranged a wooden box for her. His plan was to leave the princess in the forest by floating the box on water. If God wished her to live, the box would float to some shore and some good person would save her. He did exactly that. He placed the princess in the box, floated it on the water, and returned crying. Now see the miracle of God. The box was floating when a fairy flying in the sky noticed it. She came down, lifted the box, placed it on the riverbank, and looked at the baby carefully. She understood that this was a princess thrown into the jungle by the king's order. The fairy knew that the king of this land hated women, so she was in a hurry. She took off a necklace from her own neck and put it around the princess's neck. Just then, a lioness came to drink water from the river. A magical ray from the fairy's eyes fell on the lioness. This ray awakened motherly love in the lioness's heart. The lioness saw the baby. She could not see the fairy. She walked forward, lifted the princess in the same way she lifted her own cubs, and carried her to her cave. She placed her gently on a soft spot. The princess started crying, so the lioness fed her milk. The princess became quiet. Thus, the princess grew up with the lioness's cubs. Some days passed. One day, the king suddenly remembered his daughter, but his ego pushed the thought away. He hoped a son would be born who would become the heir to his throne. But God was angry with him. Many years passed, but he had no child. Now he thought that if God did not want to give him a son, then at least he should give him a daughter. But none of his prayers were accepted. He even started hating himself for throwing away the daughter who could have become his heir. He never showed these feelings to others, but alone he often cried remembering the princess. The queen also understood his hidden pain. To forget their sorrow, the king now often went out with the queen. Meanwhile, the princess grew up in the lioness's cave. Sometimes the fairy would take her out, show her the world, then return her to the lioness. The fairy brought beautiful clothes for her. The princess became very close to the fairy. The fairy taught her to speak, walk, and run. The princess was also very happy with the cubs and went hunting with them. The cubs ate raw meat, but the fairy taught the princess to rub stones and make fire. She would roast meat and eat it. Sometimes she offered the roasted meat to the cubs, but they never ate it. One day, When Princess became a 20-year-old, the fairy took the princess to the fairy world. She showed her everything and then took her to her own palace. In a magical mirror, the fairy wanted to see the young man who was destined to marry the princess. She wished to see whether he was as beautiful as the princess or not. But the moment the scene appeared, the fairy became deeply worried. In the mirror lay a young man, very handsome, but with thousands of needles pierced into his body. He looked dead. The scene shocked the fairy. She held the princess's hand and quickly took her to a cave where an old woman was praying. Hearing their footsteps, the woman looked up. "Fairy Moroni, why have you come?" she asked. The fairy said, "Grandmother, this is the unfortunate girl who was thrown into the jungle by her father. The kind officer put her in a box and floated her on water. I rescued her. I wanted to marry her to a very handsome young man. But today, when I looked into the magic mirror, the sight frightened me." The old woman said, "Child, the young man you saw is also a prince. He is not dead. His stepmother performed black magic and pierced thousands of magical needles into him. He is unconscious, worse than dead. If the princess stays in this cave and every day after worship removes one needle from his body, only one, then he will live. But if she tries to remove more than one, he will die forever. When the final needle is removed, he will wake up." The fairy asked, "What should I do now?" The old woman said, "Leave the princess here. Take these 2 magical vessels for her. One will always stay full of water. The other will always stay full of fresh, hot food. These things will never finish." She gave the vessels to the fairy. The fairy took the princess to the cave where the prince lay and handed her the 2 vessels. "Child, your fate is tied to this young man," she said. "I do not know what more is written in your destiny. Your real parents are alive, but they believe you are dead. May God unite you with them. I will return only when your wedding happens. Now start your work. Pray every night and every morning remove 1 needle. It may take a year or less, but whatever happens, you must remove all the needles." With that, the fairy left. Evening was near. The princess ate from the vessel, drank the sweet water in the morning, and saw that the vessels never emptied. She placed them in a corner and looked at the prince closely for the first time. She felt both kindness and sadness for him. She went outside to walk, then returned before dark. She was shocked. A lamp was burning near the prince's head. She prayed all night. At dawn, she removed 1 needle and went out again. This became her daily routine. Meanwhile, the lioness had become sad without the princess. One day, she found the cave. The princess had just returned from her walk. They both hugged each other with great love. The lioness stayed outside the cave from then on. Days passed. Only 1 needle remained. The princess was filled with joy, thinking the prince would soon rise. That same day, the king, the queen, and soldiers came hunting near the cave. The lioness was walking ahead of the princess. The soldiers saw the lioness, pulled their bows, and shot many arrows. The lioness fell dead. The princess ran screaming. The soldiers were shocked to see such a beautiful girl. She threw herself over the lioness and cried loudly. In anger, she attacked the soldiers. Just then the king and queen arrived. They were shocked to see a girl fighting like this. By the king's order, the princess was captured and taken to the palace. She cried, screamed, and tried to escape. She remembered the last needle. She remembered her lioness mother, but she was locked in a room. That night again, she prayed. When the king and queen had seen her face, A strange restlessness had filled their hearts. They could not sleep. Before sunrise, they came to see her. The door was opened. One thing shocked the king deeply. The princess looked exactly like the queen when she was young. The queen also felt something in her heart. She walked toward the princess to hug her. The princess folded her hands and said, "For God's sake, take me back to that cave." When she raised her hands, the stamp on her wrist became visible. The queen showed it to the king. He trembled. Could this be their daughter? He immediately called the officer. The officer accepted that he himself had stamped the mark on her wrist. Now the joy of the king and queen had no limit. They hugged her and told her the truth. The princess was happy, but she insisted on returning to the cave. She told them the whole story of the prince. Shocked, the king and queen went with her to the cave. The princess took God's name and pulled out the final needle. The prince stood up, confused. The princess told him everything. The prince thanked her and wanted to return to his own kingdom. The king gave him a fast horse. The prince rode away. The princess returned happily to the palace, but she often wondered what had happened to the prince. When the prince reached home, he learned his stepmother had died. The prince rushed to the palace. The court recognized him and informed the king. The king was told that the prince was lost while hunting. The father and son hugged with joy. The king was old and blind, so he gave the throne to the prince. One day the prince said he wanted to marry the princess of the neighboring kingdom. The king happily agreed and sent a message. The princess's father accepted, and soon the prince and princess were married with great celebration. The two kingdoms were united, and the prince and princess lived happily. One day, the couple went hunting. The prince's horse ran ahead. Suddenly, two lions attacked him. He fell. Before the lions could kill him, the princess shouted their names. Hearing her voice, the lions left the prince and wagged their tails, walking toward her. These were the lioness's cubs who grew up with her. The princess introduced them to her husband. She told him how their mother had fed her milk and raised her. The prince thanked God, saying, "Because of this, my life was saved today." He took the two lions with him. They lived in the palace. Dear friends, if you like this story, please like this video and subscribe my channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon.